to get us going. All right, so we are live again, Stacey.
Hey, Jen.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Surviving.
Taking us a few days to be able to sync up our timings and a few misfires, but we're back on board. So hopefully we'll get through the whole rest of the story today, and then either can do a wrap up as part of this one, or maybe one final one as a wrap up, just to once we've turned our minds to that. So before we get cracking into the next part of the series, we've had some awesome feedback, lots of people viewing the videos, which is amazing and really supportive and lovely to have the support of so many people out there. We've had some feedback and comments about the title that people have been given, and just to give some context, the wizard has been called the Wizard. That was actually just a play on the Wizard of Oz, and the fact that that character is someone who was basically fraudulently put forward as someone with these incredible magical powers, but when the people finally got behind the screen, they realized it was this tiny little man who really was nothing, who was fake and fraudulent and pretending to be something that he wasn't. So for anyone who wasn't sure, I know that he is I've been informed that the wizard is referred to as the wizard in some Inner-Rama circles. So, you know, whatever people want to call these people, at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Fraud, there's no intention to give these people powers where there are none, or, you know, some mystical title or anything like that. And, you know, everyone's going to have their different interpretations of names and titles and whatever, but that's where we were coming from with the wizard title. And, you know, the owner is more an identification of that person's role in the business, and you know, she is seen as the figurehead of that business, and that there's nothing more to that. But you know, yes, absolutely. Do we think that these two people hold any power? No. And where we've mentioned, we can touch on this later, but where we've mentioned, you know, black magic or whatever, we don't reference that believing that they actually are able to achieve any of these things. I think they have often gone into things with those intentions and with negative intentions, but I don't believe that they actually succeed in doing anything that they want to do. And I don't believe they have, you know, particular powers or anything. Jen, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, our intention, again, just to remind everyone in doing this, is for us to share our story, and our emphasis is really more on our personal experience moving through it. You know, the reason that we're not using names is because to us, that's not the importance here. It's not about getting into drama of names and who does what and who did what. It's for us to kind of go through this process to express what happened to us, for us to get some closure on the actual spiritual experiences of it. And as we're going through it, we're also going through how we felt and what we experienced in that moment. So some of what we describe is what we experienced in that moment, and some of it might be, we may have a different perspective on it now that it's been, you know, a year and a half, almost 2 years, and we've done some more work around it. Those perspectives may have changed as well. So, you know, we understand that other people, you know, everyone has their own interpretation of our stories, and they're free to do so, and, you know, and to look at whatever that means for them, or whatever emotions that brings up for them. But we're going to continue with our story, because this is our story. So that's where we're at. And today,
yeah, and I think we'll just stick with the same names just for continuity. You know, again, because if I now try to put some other names to people, like, I'll end up worrying more about getting the new names right than recounting the story. So, you know, no one be offended by that. It's just for continuity, and that's it.
Yeah. And I mean, we all have different experiences. I have a very supernatural experience. So my experience is one dealing with energies and magic and so forth. So, you know, when we're looking at our belief systems, I'm gonna have to honor and be authentic in what my belief system is.
Totally.
So
That you make that's a really good point. That's a really good point, Jen, because I was going to say, whilst you and I shared this experience together, we also had really different experiences at the same time, because you were having a very, very different sort of psychic experience to what I was having, and you had a lot of visions and channeled a lot of stuff, and that wasn't necessarily my experience. And so yeah, it's like everybody, even being there together, we'd be sitting right next to each other and you'd be having a very different experience to what I experienced. And that's, you're so right, all we can do is honor our own story and our own experience, and recount that for others. And you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. So today we get to the very exciting point of the fairy pools. I mean, I don't know about you, but when we were like on the trip, I knew that the fairy pools were going to happen, because I think it was on the website somewhere of like, if you go to Scotland, you get to go to the fairy pools.
Yeah.
And I know that was what had drawn a lot of us there. So I was like, even though the day prior it was pretty rough and I'd had, you know, a pretty awful time in the middle of the street in the middle of the morning, I was still somewhat excited to be at the fairy pools. Like personally, I wanted to be in that space and I wanted to see what the energy brought up. I mean, now I had this other layer going on top of that experience, but I was excited to go. I mean, what were your thoughts before we went to the fairy pools?
I think, to be honest, I was kind of shitting myself after your encounter with her, because I was just like, I also was, and I think that's also because I wasn't in a great mental space at that point. That point at being in Plockton and staying at that inn, and those kind of 2 days. Mm-hmm. Were probably a real turning point for me, of just going, oh my God. I mean, I had a full-blown anxiety attack on like one of those nights being back at the hotel, because I literally felt like I was losing my mind, and like I was being held prisoner somewhere. I mean, it was just a really, insane moment. And then, so really, I just wanted to protect myself, and I wanted us to kind of be able to fly under the radar a little bit, just to keep ourselves safe. And I was just hoping that she would leave us alone. And so then for you to have that encounter, I just thought, oh my God, like, you know, I've got to get up today and try and psych myself up to possibly have her go off at me, or you know, whatever. So I think I probably wasn't thinking about the fairy pools so much. I was thinking, okay, great, like how am I going to do this? So
how many bus rides are we going to be on today? You know, before we got on the bus that morning, I had you know, after I had wandered around town for 3 or 4 hours in the rain thinking, and I had come to this perspective, we'll say, that I was in a potentially dangerous position from an energy perspective, and I felt that perhaps there was an energy harvesting thing going on. And what I did is I actually reached out to all of my spiritual community back home, you know, my original spiritual mentors, some of my friends.
Right.
And I had emailed them all, and I had said, you know, I'm in this situation. I didn't give them a full background of what had happened. I just said, you know, I'm sensing these energies. Are you able to tap in? Can you get a read on my energy as well? And I'm just asking everyone I know to please send me any resources that you have energetically, right? If you have a supportive team and they're willing to help out with me, please send them my way. Because I had this feeling of like, going into battle, like I was going to step into battle, even though I was excited to go to the fairy pools.
Yeah.
You know, when we got on the bus and we started driving, like my whole body was just shaking. And some of that was
Yeah.
probably the adrenaline from the conversation, but some of it was something more. And being someone who's been a channel for a few years in a more professional capacity as well, I know my body's signals in that sense of when I've got some energy coming in. And I was telling you before we got on the call today that I pulled out my journal this week from the trip, because I had this feeling I had written something down. Because remember how we said we didn't journal anything? I had
Yeah.
actually written one page down, and it was this morning on the bus. So I was going to read it because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I had written down the Isle of Skye, which is where we were headed, and I had felt this like young male energy come in. And I didn't mention this, I don't think, when we first in part one, but when I had landed in Edinburgh, I had connected with these energies that were referring to people who had been in the rocks, and the White Witch, and they were talking to me when I had landed in Edinburgh. And so this energy kind of continued as we went on the trip. So this young male that came in identified himself with the name Jonathan of the Banks. And this is what I wrote down as we were on our drive to the fairy pools. So it kind of sets the stage. So this is what he had said to me. Free the refugees. Open the tunnel to Atlantis. Activate the Aetheris. Lights are in the feet. Each step, pull the light up from the inner world into the 3D and out from the heart. This lets them return to the earth. March together. During the meditation, push the symbol from your heart to the center of the circle and use the drum to open the portal. We will win if we do this. So that had come in, and I was a
Wow.
little bit like, so these fairy pools maybe aren't going to be as relaxing and playful, like, so I'm not going to see some cartoon fairies like I was
Love and
hoping.
light, Jen.
Yeah,
Love and
maybe
light.
there's going to be something else going on here. So anyway, I had written that down, and in the meantime, some of my friends had responded to my email and had given me some advice, you know, to ground my energy, to remember, you know, my star family. And you know, we're sending resources. We're sending our resources. They'll be coming. So I remember.
And do you remember that we reached out? We also messaged another
Yes.
another member of the Graces, who then sort of like told us all this information that would have been really nice to know. And it's funny how many times that happened, actually, that
Yeah.
we sort of like reach out to someone and then they'd say, oh, I've always had this feeling that X, Y, and Z, and I've never liked X, Y, and Z, and I always felt really creeped out about this. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like childbirth. Why does nobody like say anything? But then you realize everybody's sitting there thinking the same thing, but no one wants to dare to speak out.
Yeah.
Against
Exactly.
those two.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, it's really
it was
interesting.
tuning into some of the other energies at play too, because part of what I was just trying to decipher, and still trying to decipher in honesty, is, you know, were we just coming up with energies that were present in the land that was creating this esoteric experience in our mind, or was this something that was being facilitated because of the people that we were around? You know, it's still not really clear to me. And I wanted to have that information, right? Because I don't want to make judgment or decisions, you know, because I'm having some kind of psychological experience, or and I'm reading.
Oh, and it was really hard to work out what was going on because it was so unexpected. Like it was, and it was just so intense and dark, and so it was very difficult to determine what was going on, aside from going, oh my God, this feels horrendous.
Yeah. So we arrived at the fairy pools, and what was your first impression of the fairy pools when we got there?
So initially, like, I mean, in terms of the nature and the landscape, I mean, you really would be hard pressed to find somewhere as beautiful as that. I think I mentioned before that, like, the whole Queenstown comparison in New Zealand, and it really has that kind of magic to it, the scenery. And I think we kind of started walking in like groups, or, you know, it wasn't everybody together. But to be honest, I wasn't really paying much attention, because I decided that my best strategy of defense was going to be offense with her. So I decided to just, I think the owner and her soon-to-be husband had walked up ahead of everyone to do another fashion shoot, paparazzi extravaganza. So they were way ahead. So I decided I'm just going to power up this like mountain, and I am just going to walk straight up to her to just assess like where she's at. And I thought, if I'll give her the opportunity if she wants to have a go at me or whatever. But I just thought, pardon my French, I was like, fuck this shit. I am not going to let this woman like hold anything over me. And I'm certainly not scared of her or afraid of her, if that's what she was trying to do with her interaction with you, to, you know, intimidate us or whatever. And so I just felt that was very important to do. So I literally like walked straight up to her. And then she said, "Oh, hi," and then asked me something about my now ex-partner, and giggled a bit and was like, "Oh, yeah," and that was it. And then I just went, what is going on? Like, this is even more insane. I mean, that's why it's such a head fuck, right? Like, because you just, all these different exchanges and just all these other subtle layers of, you know, head mind games and stuff that was going on. And so, you know, then I just went, oh, okay, so that's how we're going to roll. And I thought, okay, that's good. Now I can kind of step back and then maybe just try to enjoy the fairy pools a bit. And
Yeah, I mean, it was really beautiful. Can you see the picture that I
yes.
Okay. Because I remember when we arrived, I was drawn to the mountains in the background. And again, my pictures aren't that great because I was focused on other things. But the beautiful mountains, and you can see kind of the clouds overhead. Like, there was just something so magical about the mountains.
Yeah.
And the mountains, you know, immediately started talking to me before we even got off the bus. Like, I was in conversation and I was hearing the story about the mountains. And I think even the tour guide had talked about the myth of the mountains of sisters or something along that lines. But I remember getting off and just having so much energy. Maybe it was the adrenaline, but I just wanted to move. Like, there was so much fun, like hopping over those little rocks. Like, there was just something that I just felt so comfortable in my body there that I hadn't, you know, normally felt, that I was like, I just want to move. Like, let's just get on this land and go see as far as we can walk up those pools. And it was, you know, it was a bit of a maze getting up there, but the water was running down, and you just had that little bit of green because it's, you know, obviously they're off season when we were there. And it was just, you know, these mountains here in the background, there was something about them. And when, you know, when we were walking through, obviously I had the message previous, so I had a mission that I needed to do there. So I was directed with some of my crystals. I needed to put some of my crystals in the water of the fairy pools. So I was doing that. I mean, I did get caught by the wizard doing that at one point with my tiger eye, because I was trying to do it without being seen.
That you did provide me with comic relief, Jen, on many occasions, because I always knew you were off on, if I couldn't find you, that you were off on some like crazy excursion for something that you'd been like told to do. And then every now and then I would just see you out of the corner of my eye in some random place, trying to hide, trying to be surreptitious about what you would do. It was actually quite funny. It was just like, I can't even believe we are doing this, but anyway.
I know. So like the big lesson or the big message I had when we were at the fairy pools, there was two big things that are still with me today. I'm still doing this work now back in Canada as well. But the biggest thing, and this was from that Jonathan of the Banks, is he was referring to our people. And I don't mean that in the terms of like race of our people as we see it today in 2021, but this was an ancient, a past life scenario that had played out. And he described this story to me of how we had, you could say like two factions that were battling each other. And you and I have talked about this as well, which we'll come to later. But in that process, the people, the faction that I had been part of had been captured and had been captured in the rocks here. And so I kept hearing when I was there, you need to free our people out of the rocks. You need to free our people out of the rocks. And I kept going, okay, what do you want me to do? I'll just do it.
How do I do that?
No, okay. Clearly yesterday wasn't enough. So today we're just going to keep on going down this path. And so some of it was some crystal work. I had to lay some crystals there. And I also had to do some work with the water when I was there. And in speaking with the water, I had this really beautiful conversation about the land that I have here in Canada. So I have a little, forested property here in Canada, and there's also a public property that's very dear to my heart here in Canada as well that I've been working with. And the water had said to me, it sounds crazy as I say it, the water had said to me that the water here in the fairy pools is the sister water to the water that I work with in Canada. And they gave me this image of the water moving through the earth. And they showed me that the water there in Scotland was connected underneath the earth with the water here in Canada. And they had assured me that when I came back home, that I would continue to work with this water from the fairy pools, that we would be in partnership from that point forward. So that was an interesting conversation. And they had said that I needed to do some crystal work and a meditation on my own when I was out there to open up a portal that would allow some of these people that were captured in the stones to be released. However, before we got to do that, I guess I should say, we did a group meditation. Do you remember the group meditation out there on the fairy pools?
Yes, I do. I do, because I was literally, if I could have like pictured myself, it was like doing this. La, 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 la. And I don't know if anybody realizes, but it's actually really hard to be in a group where you now know that, I mean, there was like what, probably 80 people, or would you say, or like around that, like it's not a small group of people. And then you know now that there are eyes on you, and then you're trying to look like you're doing the meditation, but at the same time trying to not do the meditation. So it was like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. Like there was just so much going on, and I was just going, oh my God, this is just torturous. And then one particular member of the inner sanctum was then, obviously I'd worked out that day, was assigned to me to start sticking to me like glue, because this person had never once up until that point even bothered to acknowledge that I existed or introduce herself to me or anything. And now all of a sudden came up to me randomly at the fairy pools, I think around when we were about to do the meditation, started asking me all these questions, like personal questions, and then but still trying to act like it was just all nice and friendly and whatever. And then stuck to me like glue, like literally every time I walked somewhere, I would turn around and she was like right next to me, which I thought was really strange, but yeah.
And it's funny because I think you got, with that particular person, you got the good cop and I got the bad cop version of her, because I always got frowned and glared at. What was interesting in that meditation, I don't know if you remember, but I distinctly remember when we were setting up, because we were told to like form a circle. Like I think they wanted to do a circle around the fairy pools, but it was too dangerous to cross.
Yes. It was really hard to find somewhere to sit. Yeah, it was really difficult.
Yeah, because it took a bit of time to get everybody in order there. And we were told, you know, the purpose of that meditation was to assist in manifesting some physicalities that group in particular was trying to manifest for their interests, which is fine, whatever. It's their meditation, so they can put the intention in it. But you know, because of our awareness at this point, I was like, I'm not meditating anymore, and I'm not feeding any more energy into this anymore, because I don't know what I'm feeding into at this point. All I know is it feels bad, so I'm not going to do something that doesn't feel right in my heart or in my body. So I was like, I'm just not going to meditate. and that's, so I opened my eyes. Normally I meditate with my eyes closed. So that particular meditation, I decided to meditate with my eyes open. And I learned a lot with my eyes open, because I don't think we were standing beside each other for that meditation.
No.
We were separated. And what I noticed was that, you know, a few other people don't meditate with their eyes closed either. And the wizard was actually directing some of the senior people to move to specific spots. And what I noticed is that they were moved directly opposite of us. So there was one in front of me and there was one in front of you. And I thought, well, geez, that's odd. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but that's a little bit odd. And so it was just something I noticed. And then I noticed that they also weren't meditating with their eyes closed and were staring directly at me. So then I was like, okay, well, this feels really uncomfortable. So I just closed my eyes and I did the Charlie Brown mouth of just like, and moved my mouth as if we were too far. And I mean, you're out in nature, you can't really hear if people are chanting at that point. So we did that and it felt really uncomfortable. And then from there, we started making our way back to the bus, because it was a bit of a walk out there. And I still had my mission to complete. So, you know, one of the other team members, helpers, you could say, had pulled me aside, and also I think playing good cop with me this time had said, oh, if you need to do something, like if you just need to take a moment for yourself, go ahead and take a moment for yourself. And I was like, okay, thanks, I'm going to do it anyway, but thank you. And unfortunately, this was the one place where I felt I didn't actually fully fulfill my mission, because I needed to get closer to the actual mountain in the middle, that triangle that you see there. And there just wasn't enough time for me to get out there.
It's a long walk. It's a
very
long walk.
Yeah.
And the weather was starting to get, it was funny, the weather changed so much there, because I've got some amazing shots of that day where the sky is completely blue, and it just looks like so different to like the image that you see there. And then while we were meditating, or around that time, then it was raining and the clouds were so low to the earth. And I think I posted a photo later that said, like, this is literally where heaven meets the earth, because that's what it felt like. It felt like you were in between two worlds, but it was difficult terrain. The further up you went, it was really hard to walk that trail, and especially when it was getting wet and muddy. And
so I ended up doing a small meditation because I needed to do the work for Atlantis while I was out there. So I went, there was like these really thick, rough bushes. And I have a piece of the bush in my notebook here still dried up, because I was like, I need to remember this prickly bush. I can't remember the name of it though. And had set up my crystals and had done a meditation. And I had actually purchased some crystals when I was in Spain that cost me a couple heavy dollars, and I had to leave them in this place. So as we walked back, I was at the back of the group because I had gone and I'd left to do that. And so thankfully, because I felt so good out there, I just started running and I was able to catch up with and then I got ahead of the photo shoot again. So I was able to do some more crystal work. Oh, there's Stacey. Crystal work when I was out there. And I had to leave this beautiful being behind at the falls.
Poor Jen. I was just always felt so sorry for you. Like, I was always, because I was trying, I did intentionally try not for us to be together all the time, because I also didn't want to give them any ammunition or ability to criticize us or have a go at us. And, you know, I was just like, whatever, you know, and I knew you had stuff to do as well. But then I would always be worried. I'm like, oh my God, Jen's going to get like stuck out here by herself, or like something's going to happen. She's not going to be able to do the things that she's supposed to do. And it was so funny. And then I felt so sorry for you that I was like, Jen's going to end up with no crystals at the end of this trip, because she literally has to leave crystals everywhere we go.
Talk about a lesson in releasing money. Like, I got that lesson. Yeah. I got that lesson in 2019 in every front with this experience. But I'm hoping that little specimen was able to leave the energy behind that it needed out there. I know since then I can still talk to the water at the fairy pools, and I can still talk to the people that were in the stones at the fairy pools. Even just today, we were talking with them, with my daughters, when we were out in the forest. So
that's beautiful.
So there's some benefit to whatever happened. So then we had to wait. We got on some buses and we drove to the next spot. Yeah.
Yes.
So
we did indeed.
I remember driving up to this spot. So this is like an old, I'm calling it a stone circle, but that's not the proper name for it.
No, I think it's
called. I think it's called.
Yeah. Which I think is like a general name for this kind of configuration. But I think it was called Dunbeeg Brook or something. Yeah, I think from memory. Yeah.
Dunbeeg Brook. Now, this was very interesting because when we were on the bus all together again, driving here, I could feel this like huge energy coming in. Like, I remember again shaking. I was like, oh God, what's happening at the next spot? And I was getting more emails from my friends of, you know, we're sending you support. And I have a particular close friend who works with a lot of galactic beings. And she's like, I've sent everybody. And I was like, okay, good. And part of you is like, you know, okay, this is good. I got all these resources. And then the other part of you is like, am I going mad? Like, am I really going to use all these like galactic beings and celestial beings like at this next stop, you know? But I remember as we pulled up and we came to a stop on the side of the road, like this is literally just on the side of the road somewhere, I saw thousands of galactic beings standing on the top of this ridge. And I knew they were all there for me. There was no question in it. And there was this overwhelming feeling that came in before I stepped off the bus is you're going to do something really important here. And you're the one in control. There is no fear. You don't have to be afraid. And I just remember, like, you know, when you like step into that like warrior feeling in your body, like I just felt like I stepped into it. And when I got off the bus and I was walking up that ridge, the wizard was just a little bit ahead of me. And I to this day, I mean, you can believe what you want to believe, but to this day, I feel confident that he saw that army of galactic beings at the top.
Oh, okay.
He stopped and he turned around and looked at me, and we looked each other right in the eyes. And, you know, as we went on this trip, him and I just communicated telepathically from that point on. And so I just kind of looked at him and smiled, and then we kept on walking. Now, do you remember the top? Because there was a lot of like beautiful selfie pictures up here at the top. I was busy, so I didn't this was the only shot I got after I had done my setup, because I had to do a setup here. I don't know what your experience was walking up.
Yeah, I was just trying to get away from my keeper who had been assigned to me, and it was half like playing a game of cat and mouse. Like I was sort of just playing with her to see if she would follow me everywhere, which she did. Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel anything. I mean, there was very strong energy there, absolutely, as with most of the places that we went to. But I I think it was actually, because again, see how it looks so beautiful and sunny and blue, but it was freezing cold. And then because we had to do the meditation, the next meditation, sitting all together out around with our backs to the outside of the stone, inside it was actually, you can see the shadow, so it was in the complete shadow and it was freezing cold. And then my little keeper magically ended up sitting right next to me in the meditation, and I think we had to hold hands or something, didn't we, in that one? I feel like there was something about where I was just going, oh my God, like,
Yeah,
you're going to end up with me this whole day.
So I'm going to just clarify, it was cold for an Aussie.
Yes, true, exactly. Yeah, but Jen, you're used to anything. You probably had like 2 layers of clothing on, and I probably had 14 layers of clothing on.
Yeah.
So,
as I sit here in minus 30 degrees Celsius weather at the current moment, I would do a lot to go back to this day right now. But when I got up there, so I had all these galactic beings at the top assisting, and I was given instructions, while everyone was taking the beautiful Insta photos atop, to sneak inside the circle ahead of the group, and I had to plant some more crystals in there. And I remember specifically planting galaxite. I had put one in the center of the circle, and then I had planted some in the crevices of the rocks on the outside. So there was like 4 points, I think, in the outside circle, and then one in the center. And then when we started filing in, you probably remember this, we started filing in, some people found my crystal in the center, and they were like, oh look, somebody left a crystal, it's meant to be. And I didn't say a word. You looked me right in the eye, and I was like, I'm not saying a word. I got my backups planted. If they take it, I don't care. But someone convinced them that maybe it was there for a reason, so it was left in the center of the circle. And we did another chant, I remember, in that circle. And at this point, I really tapped into that ability to hold 2 consciousness at once. So at this point, I knew I had to appear as if I was chanting, because again, we had those people opposite or beside us. And I think you're right. I think they were beside us there, because I remember thinking, you have to chant somewhat because they're listening to hear you, right? And that might have just been our paranoia, but it was what we felt in that moment. So we started chanting, and I immediately dropped into this, I'm going to call it like a 4th dimensional space in that circle. And this is what I saw. To this day, this still haunts me. So there was 4 groups. There, I was representing one group. The wizard was representing another group. And then there was 2 other groups. I felt like I was somehow connected to galactic beings. The wizard was kind of connected to wizard-like beings. There was another group that felt like they were relating more towards like fairies and elementals. And then there was a 4th faction that I couldn't quite get clarity on who it was they were representing. But it was almost like you had 4 elements represented in the circle. And as the group was chanting, I saw this light grid form all the way around the planet. So just, like you would picture a matrix all the way around the globe. And it was a yellow, like a golden yellow light. And I could see all the grids and how they interconnected. And as we were doing that, the group was discussing how the old matrix had collapsed, was falling apart, it was no longer working, and we needed to generate a new matrix for the planet. And the debate was that the group that the wizard represented wanted or needed the other 3 groups to participate in this activation. They couldn't do it on their own. One group couldn't do it on their own. We all needed to come together to activate it. And so the other 3 groups of us had said, we'll agree to do it if the resource is shared equitably around the planet by all 4 of our representative groups. And the wizard group was pushing that they would get like 60 or 70% of it. And the rest of us were like, no, we're not making agreement. That's no agreement, no agreement. So we were literally like arguing and yelling while I'm also doing this meditation, right? And so what we ended up doing is the wizard and I got into a big debate because I was saying, I don't trust you. I don't know what you're doing here. I don't trust that what you're telling me is even the truth in this moment. And the other factions kind of agreed with me. So we came to an agreement that we would allow this activation to happen, but it would only happen with the very strong agreement or treaty that each group had an equal say in how that grid was used, and that it would only be used for the good of humanity. It wouldn't be used for nefarious purposes. So we got agreement on that. Once we had that agreement, I saw this massive yellow light come up through the center of the circle, kind of where that galaxite had been sitting in the center of the circle. It went up, it went really high out into the universe, and then the new grid was established. And we then had an agreement, a treaty is what I heard, between these four groups that was to be honored moving forward. So it was a pretty intense feeling, because that was, at the fairy pools, I knew there was some kind of relationship happening between the wizard and I, because we were both seemingly battling this energy of, if he was wanting one thing and I was like, no, we're not going to have that unless it's good. And, and good and bad can be debated. So this was like the first time in the 4D that we had direct contact, and direct disagreement and agreement, you could say. So it was a pretty clear conversation. And I felt that walking up, when he stopped and turned at me, I was like, okay, we're now communicating on this level. And it continued that way for quite a while, even after the trip. So we did that. We finished up our meditation. I think some of us were sitting on our garbage bags so that our bums didn't get wet. And then we headed back down.
Yeah, did we? I can't remember whether we did the that ferry bridge.
Oh yes.
Thing before that, or
you remember that better? I was still focused on this place. You tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing too heinous happened there. Thank God we had a reprieve. But it was a nice story. From what I can remember, and I'm probably not remembering it accurately, but it's this place where basically this little bridge and a river runs through it, and the tale goes that the fairy queen met and married, was it the King of Scotland or the head of one of the clans? I think it was the head of one of the clans, and like it's this kind of magical story about the joining of the two, and I think they had a child or something, and of course everyone was trying to relate the romance to the owner and her now husband, and the wizard and his child bride, and we had to all gather around and watch the paparazzi do their thing again. And meanwhile, I'm just standing there going, yes, we seem to have finished like the day in good time, and maybe we can just go back to the hotel and like just do our own thing and have 5 seconds of peace. And I don't know if you remember, if there's anything else you remember from that.
No, I was pretty zoned out. I think I had to go to the washroom or something at that point.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Like, can we go?
Yeah. And so then I thought, yes, we're going to get on the bus and like drive home. And like, it's difficult because you don't really have any concept of where you are when you're driving to these places. So, but I didn't feel like it took us a long time to get to these places. So I'm thinking, oh, cool, we'll just be home, like back at the hotel within like an hour or something, and have all this free time. Little did we know that the owner, Her Highness, wanted to go on a shopping expedition. So then we ended up driving to that sheepskin shop that was like literally about 3 hours away from where we were. Then we had the pleasure of having to watch them do a fashion parade and have a party in the sheepskin shop for like literally we must have been there for 3 hours.
I think so. I'm pretty sure we were counting because we sat.
Yeah, I was fuming. There was like smoke. Yeah, there was smoke coming out of my ears. Like I said to you before we started this video, I thought that there was going to be another massacre in Scotland, and it was going to be me of anybody who was still inside that shop. Like, just the rudeness and the level of disrespect. Literally the whole group, bar the posse at one point, were on the bus and had been sitting on the bus for a good hour and a half. The tour guide and the bus driver were ropeable, because they were just like, okay, how long can you stay in a shop? And then people would go in to say, okay, but no one had the guts to say, listen, you know, it's time to go. And you would walk in and they were literally reclining on the floor, taking photos of each other. And like, I know it sounds outrageous, you can't believe it, but it was like literally 3 hours of, and you were just sitting on this bus just going, I'm incredulous that these people, and then the tour guide ended up telling us that we were literally like another 2-hour drive away from the hotel, because we'd gone so far out of the way to go to this shop. And so then we didn't get, by the time they finally finished and came on board, we didn't get back to the hotel until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And when you're getting on a bus in the morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, like that, it's a long day. And it was just so infuriating. It was just so typical of the behavior. Like, yeah, it was just that I just remember being so pissed off. And I think that's the night that we ended up getting a beer.
Yes.
Our first beer of the trip.
We broke the rules and we got a beer. You know, the only thing that brings me solace about the 3 hours on the bus at the end of the day that day was that family probably made like a year's worth of income in that one that 3 hour stint. That was the only thing that was like, okay, that makes me feel better about the situation. But the beer definitely helped. It was
we needed it. We needed just something to feel normal. Like, I don't know about you, but I was like, I just need to pretend that I'm doing normal person stuff to like bring me back down to earth, because but it was quite funny that we had to hide in there. I mean, that little hotel was it's kind of the equivalent of what like a bed and breakfast, or so, you know, like when we say hotel, we're not talking, you know, hotel like people are used to in big cities. It's, you know, a 10-room hotel with a, you know, dining area, and then there was a little tiny public bar, you know, really lovely, quaint bar that you would expect in these tiny towns. But it was also very difficult to hide and drink a beer in this place when there's 80 other yogis from the cult walking around, and we're not supposed to be drinking beer. So it was pretty funny that we were like cowering behind this bar, hoping that nobody walked in. And then I thought, okay, we're safe on the public bar side because none of the others should technically be coming in here, but you could see across the bar to like the kind of reception area and stuff. So I was trying to like hide us put our seats in a particular area so we couldn't be seen. And God, if I could have, I would have had 10 beers if you weren't there, Jen, because I think modifying my behavior.
Because of the training we had been in, and obviously you were heavily discouraged from drinking. I don't think I'd had a drink in over 6 months. So it was a really good beer that night. Like, it was a really good beer. And it did help to feel normal, you know, whatever normal is these days.
I know, well, as normal as we could in that environment.
So the next day we got up and we started heading to our next stop. But along the way, we stopped in Fort Augustus, where we went on the Loch Ness tour. And, you know, it was funny. Like, I was expecting like the Loch Ness experience to be, I don't know, bigger than what it was. Not bigger, but I just, you know, I expected it to be this big thing, because you always hear about the story of Loch Ness, like as a kid and everything else. So when we arrived, maybe it was just the shock of everything else I had been through, but I was like, okay, we're getting on a boat. like I got on a bus and now we're getting on a boat and then we're going to get on another bus. And it just became like, you know, it was almost, you almost became robotic and like, okay, I'm being told where I need to move. I'm just paying attention to what's happening as I move. I don't know, what was your sense when we got to Loch Ness area?
It was all, I felt like we were just going through the motions at that point, and you know, getting on that boat. I was just hoping that the Loch Ness monster was real and would come up and like somehow eat the boat and we wouldn't have to live through any more of what we were going through. Or I would have just been happy to go and, I don't know, sit in a cafe and hide out, just the two of us. Like, I think I was just so sick of being around everybody and just having to deal with, being in that environment and just being frustrated and annoyed. I think they were late onto the bus again. And I think before we got off the bus at this point, the tour guide actually had made a few really snide remarks about, you know, the fact that people needed to actually be respectful and, you know, be on time, because trying to get to all these different places, we did actually have timing requirements and you're supposed to be at certain points at certain times and for tours booked in and whatever, but you know, for the owner and the entourage, it's whatever suits them. So yeah, I think I was just pretty much like pissed off and just trying to, like, you know, desperate to get away and hide from the group.
I know when I was on the bus, on the boat, same thing. I was like, I just want a moment for myself. And I went up top, like there was an open air part up top.
Yes, you went upstairs.
And I even went and bought mittens before we went on the boat because I knew I wanted to be outside. Like, nature helps to ground me. And of course, the wizard and the owner and their group was outside as well. So I wasn't feeling comfortable. And at this point, I'm like probably moving into a state of paranoia as well. So I'm like, what's going to happen on this boat ride? So I ended up coming back down and I sat right at the front where the tour guide was, where he was giving his talk, and they had like a video where you could see like the sonar into the lake, so you could see if there was movement for the Loch Ness. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna hunt for the Loch Ness while that's what I'm gonna focus on. And I did see it spiritually, you could say. So I saw it with my third eye. It was not what I expected. What I actually saw was these, like, you could say wizards or warlocks that were connected. And then these dragons. So there was a pair of dragons that I saw in the lake there. And it was like the wizard warlock energy that I saw was trying to free the dragons. And so I sat there for quite a while, just watching it over the water and listening to this guy give all the science behind the lake. And I was trying to sort out, like, is this a good thing that the dragons are being released? Is it a bad thing that the dragons are being released? I don't really know how I feel about dragons. I had never seen dragons up until this point in my life. So it was a new vision for me. It wasn't scary by any means. I didn't have anything like that. It was just, at this point, I didn't know what I was dealing with in terms of everything that I was seeing. And bear in mind, yesterday I just negotiated a treaty with a bunch of, you know, spiritual beings. So I'm like, is this
very hard to digest?
Is this in compliance with the New World Treaty, or is this in violation of am I supposed to be policing it? You know, so all of that was running through my head, and I was feeling I don't know what the word is, like not a repulsion, but this, you know, when you have two magnets that come together, when you're drawn together, you stick together, but then when the polarity is switched, you're pushed apart. And I was feeling that kind of energy with, you know, these people that we came on the trip with, that we thought were going to be our teachers. And I was feeling this push and pull with them of perhaps we're from separate groups. So, you know, there's the Loch Ness, and this is my mood on that boat. This is about sums it up. Every time I look at this, I hear the words like Battlestar Galactica of, you know, I'm trying my best to just keep it together.
Yeah.
And I definitely need sunglasses because I don't know if I'm going to be shocked or I'm going to be crying or what's going to happen next. And
Yeah.
I remember getting off the boat and a few people came up and approached me and they're like, so is Loch Ness real? Did you see the Loch Ness? And I just nonchalantly, and I was like, yeah, 2 dragons, no big deal. And then we went and wandered for a bit because I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain this stuff anymore. Just leave me alone. So yeah, was there anything else there that you wanted to add?
No, I was similarly to you. I remember I was so antisocial at that point, and I literally stayed inside and sat at a seat on the window, put my headphones in, and just like, I don't think I even listened to the tour guide stuff or anything. I was just like, man, I just do not want to be here. This is like, I am struggling with this and being around everybody and whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. And then from there we headed on to Inverness and towards the Clava Cairns.
So I think we got like an hour or something there, didn't we? To go for free time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I literally ran as far away from everyone as I could. You and I didn't even stick together, which is like, yeah, I don't, and I don't know, like, I can't even remember us like separating or like agreeing to separate, but I just literally ran for the nearest pub and with no one seeing me, I ran into this pub because I could hear they were playing rap music. And I was like, I just need the most grounding stuff ever. So I went and sat by myself in the pub. There was nobody else in that pub except me. Listened to rap, and I think I ate chicken schnitzel and chips with gravy and smashed 2 cans of Coke because I was just like, somebody just let me do just grounding, normal, non-psycho, just like non-spiritual, as far away as I could get from the group that we were traveling with. And yeah, just because what people probably don't realize and what you forget is when you're sitting on a bus for the best part of 10 hours a day, some days, listening to the incessant shit that some of those people were talking. And I know that probably sounds like, really derogatory and judgmental and whatever, but most of it was this sycophantish kind of stuff directed towards the posse and, talking about whatever drivel they were peddling that day as well. Like I was just so over that whole energy and people bowing down to the acting as if, watching people take photos of themselves for an hour while the rest of the people sit on the bus waiting to go and you end up running late, at people acting as if that's the most amazing thing ever. And it's like, no, it's just fucking disrespectful and rude. Like, there's a tour guide and a bus driver who have a schedule. Things are booked, things are timed. You have a whole bus full of other people, bar the 10 in the posse, who are sitting on the bus, who woke up at a certain time in the day, as they were told to do, who may have instead wanted to call people back home when there's a massive time difference and you can barely speak to anyone, or may have needed another hour's sleep or whatever. Just no thought or care for anyone else who was there aside from themselves, and just like listening to people, praise that and act like, oh, that's okay because this person is a superstar. Like that's the behavior of, the adoring fans who we were surrounded by, and it just gets like so overwhelming. So I just couldn't get far enough away from everybody. So I was like, this is my hour to just sit by myself and hide until we have to get back on the bus. Yeah.
I think I went shopping because I was looking for something for my daughters, because I was feeling guilty too, because I could never connect with them because we were always so late, and we had gone through a time change in that time period as well. So it just threw everything off for me at home. And at this point, I think we were both feeling guilty of like, oh my God, I've spent all this money now. So I remember that going through my head of like, okay, I want to bring something back for my daughters, but I don't want to spend more money because I've already lost a lot on this experience. And I power walked that whole like downtown strip, and I walked all the way to the mall, which comes back in later. And when I was at the mall, there was this little table. It wasn't even a store. It was like a little table,
pop-up table.
Store. It was like a wooden table, like very sketchy setup. And they had like jewelry and stuff. And anyway, I walked by and there was this little sphere of a crystal that caught my attention. And I was like, oh, that's so pretty. I really want that crystal. And I was like, no, you came here to get something for your daughters. Do not spend any more money. Just let it go. And so I did. I never bought it. I ran back. Because we were supposed to meet at the bus. And I got there on time, and then I think we waited another hour before everybody else got back. But
the usual.
At this point, we were used to it. So that was my experience. But it was nice to have that alone time. I think we both needed that alone time to just be with our own thoughts and to do something normal and be in this world and not see dragons and stuff floating around.
Exactly. And you and that crystal will come back into play later on as well. That's a funny part of the story.
It's actually sitting on my desk as we record these sessions. It keeps finding its way back. It disappears for a while and comes back.
Well, funny you should say that, because mine's disappeared at the moment, and it was right the day that I had a past life reading a few weeks ago that relates to this story, which we'll get to at the end, that my crystals have disappeared on that day. I took them to the session, and now I cannot find them for love or money, like just disappeared. So anyway,
very interesting. So there we headed to the Cairns, which everyone was really excited about, because this is the spot. This is what, if you've seen Outlander, which I think almost everyone in the group had seen Outlander, maybe
except me.
Yeah, I had watched it intentionally before the trip because I knew it was going to be referenced a lot. So I was like, I should see what this is all going to be about. So in the opening credits of Outlander, where they show the stones, where the main character kind of goes to step through the stones in time. So she travels back in time through these stones, and she sees these people doing a ceremony around the stones. So the actual stones that story is based on is this place here, the Cairns. I wonder, this is a better picture of it. So you can see kind of those triangular stones there represent it. They're not the same ones that you see in the TV show. This is what they're based on. So they're actually somewhere else, I think, what they filmed. At least that's what I remember being told by the tour guide. So when we got there, I remember feeling like tired of like, okay, we're going to another spot again. And I remember feeling very lonely at this point as well. Like I was, even though I was seeing all this stuff, my regular team of guides was absent. So, I work with, typically was working with these blue beings, and I hadn't seen them in days, because I remember at one point just standing off to the side, because again, this was just like somebody's farmland, standing by a fence going like, please, where are you? I need help. But when we got there, obviously the main attraction is those stones, and everyone was kind of rushing to like touch the stones and be with the stones and absorb the energy of these stones. And I instead was drawn to these trees, because there was 2 rows of trees on either side. You can see behind the stones, there's another row of trees back there. And I was immediately told that when they were doing rituals, that part of the ceremony was them walking. They would enter by walking through this tunnel of trees. And so I was right in there with the trees. Like I had to put crystals under one of them at one point, of like, there was a hole underneath the trees, like where the roots should be. And I was told, you need to put a crystal in that hole. So I did. And then they were like, no, it needs to go further in the hole. And I remember like laughing, going like, I feel like I'm like shoving my hand up a tree's butt right now. So I was like, there's got to be a stick or something that I can use to poke it in. So I was doing that. But the story I was given here was that there was a lot of female energy here. which makes sense. But there was a lot of women and children. And similar to what I was told at the fairy pools, I was told here that the women and children, some of them may have been classified as like witches or this other faction, right? There was these dueling parties at some point in history. And the women had been cast into the trees. So, you know, at the fairy pools, they were cast into the stone, and here they were trapped in the trees. And they were all, there was definitely a motherly energy to it, because I
Yeah.
could feel the babies and the children with it. And I was told to actually, what prayer was it? Hail Mary. I think I was told to do the Hail Mary. And I mean, I was raised Catholic, but it's been a long time since I was in church. So I actually had to Google Hail Mary while I was at, like,
Ask
I
me,
was
Jen.
literally on my phone, because one of the assistants had seen me out there Googling on my phone. They're like, what are you Googling? And I was like, a prayer. And they're like, well, what for? And I was like, well, I was told to say a prayer. So I'm doing that prayer. And I was asked to say the Hail Mary with the trees, and then with the stones, I was told to go and put like a cross, an upward facing cross, on the stones and say the Hail Mary with the stones. And this was all in preparation because we were going to do some more meditation out there.
Oh,
Um, and this is another place that, you know, I have gone back to in my meditations quite a bit. I've had some very significant past life stuff come up by going back to this place. But the other thing they showed me is there's these stone circles. So you have the individual stones, the triangular ones, and then you can see it almost looks like a pile of stones.
yeah.
And those are actually, you know, circles as well. So there's an inner empty circle, like a donut. And what they were showing me is that light energy would come up when it was activated. Light energy would come up from those circles to a point, almost like a pyramidal type thing, and that they were using through their rituals, they were harnessing some of that energy. And so at this point, you know, the energies that I was speaking with, the, you know, the women that were in these trees had communicated to me that there was a potential intention to use the energy or capture the energy there that wasn't in the purposes that it was meant for. So I had to, I think the two at the back, I don't think they had an entrance. I think they were literally like a donut. At least one of them was. It was the donut. So you had to climb over it. You couldn't just walk in, you had to climb over it. So I did. I hopped up inside. I think I asked the tour guide or something. He was like, yeah, go ahead. You can go in. So I had to go in and put some crystals in the other ones. And then I didn't get a chance, the one we ended up meditating in, I didn't get a chance to lay crystals in that one ahead of time because the group was already there and I was distracted in these other ones. And in that one, I remember because we had the people who were watching us when we meditated. And this time we did like two circles, one in front of the other. So the person that was watching me, I had one directly behind me, and then I had someone else directly across. So I don't know if you were across or how that worked, but the one behind me was very uncomfortable. It was incredibly uncomfortable. And so again, what I was doing in this one was that dual consciousness of I'll do the chant, but I'm not doing the energy of the chant. So I'll say, I was saying the words, but the energy wasn't there. And I was tuning into that fourth dimensional space instead. And I was shown to kind of put like a golden light over the space. And so I was holding, you could say like a polarized energy, I guess, is probably how they would describe it. But I was just following my intuition on what I was asked to do there. Now, since then, I have been in those circles, I think, in previous lifetimes, because some of the things that I've had done is I've been in the middle of the circle and we've been surrounded by women and they've activated that light and it's done a healing all the way through the lineage. And I've actually witnessed some of my murders by doing that meditation in those stone circles again, now that I've gone back to them to do additional work, and they were pretty graphic, of like being held out, arms out, and being stabbed in the heart, and what, like, pretty graphic.
Yeah.
You know, so there, I mean, regardless of what was going on with the group, there was a definite connection for me to the energy and the people that are connected to that land. And
Yeah.
I felt a sense of duty, I'm going to say, at that point, to protect those energies and those people and that land. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I definitely felt a real like heart sadness being there, and a definite feminine energy. Like I knew it was connected to females and women. And funnily enough, it's actually not far from where my family in this lifetime is from, which I thought was like quite interesting as well. And yeah, what you're recounting is very similar to certain things that I was told in a past life reading as well, since, you know, even recently. And you and I have not gone into detail about the visions that you saw there. So that was an information that I, you know, gave to this person who did the reading for me. So it's really interesting that your visions and recollection marry up with what I've been told about certainly my past life there, and I've been told that you and I had a past life in Scotland. And so yeah, it's really, really interesting. But yeah, that was another place, because the meditation we had to do, like when we were in the double circle, we were packed in like sardines, and I remember we could barely fit everybody in there. And then of course my keeper was right next to me again, and I was like, well, fancy that. It's just a miracle that every place we stop, I randomly end up with you right next to me for the meditation. But that one was certainly hard to fake. Of course, as you say, my energy was not in it at all, but you really it was very difficult to not do it when you've got somebody literally like standing next to you and in front of you.
And I felt that drove up the fear too, in a lot of ways, because it was like, we're watching you, and it felt like there was this pressure of like, you need to do this, and we know you're not doing this. And then it becomes like, well, why is this a big deal?
Yeah.
So it fed in. And then when you add in the fourth dimensional piece of, you know, the wizard and I having these arguments everywhere we went, of like, because I kept saying to him, I'm not going to let you take the energy from this land. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to let you do it. And I know a few times I remember catching myself saying, again, I'm not going to let you do this again, right? Which leads into some of our past life connections with them also. The one thing that I found, you know, this was a pattern I think we saw as we went through, and even in Spain I saw this pattern too, but you know, everyone gravitated towards those triangular rocks, and I had not a lot of vibe off of that. Like there was a little bit.
I don't think I even went and touched them. To me it was just like nothing. Everybody was fawning over them and like, yeah, carrying on as if it was the Holy Grail or something, or you know, the Holy Wall, the Wailing Wall. And I'm like, what is up with these stones? Like, yeah, those particular stones I didn't feel anything about. Definitely the circular ones, yes. But
yeah, the circular ones was where, and the trees, that was where to me the energy was, and the other ones almost felt like a distraction, or like a setting up point, or just a point of reference. I'm sure there was a purpose to them, but that's not what I was shown when I was there. So then from there we got back on the bus and we started making our way, and at this point I had no crystals left. I think I left the last crystal I had at this place, you know. Me who doesn't do grid work, and like I had a handful that I brought with me because my friend told me to. But we started making our way towards Findhorn, and I was so excited to get to Findhorn, because all I kept hearing is, when you get to Findhorn, it is neutral ground.
Yeah.
There is not going to be, like, you will finally be able to relax,
breathe,
you can restock. You can get a little bit of a breather. And I knew that, like, it was just so clear that when we got to Findhorn we would get a break, that the energy there was solid,
Yeah.
and we'd be in a safe space. So I was really looking forward to that. We won't move that to that yet. And again, I think we arrived there pretty late because I know
Yeah.
the Findhorn staff seemed a little
Annoyed.
agitated with our late arrival, because they had to process to check us all in. But I do remember, because we rushed into dinner, and then we had this, so we got shown to our rooms, and I don't know if you remember, but the lady who toured us around, she was like kind of like a pixie gypsy. She
She
had like the
was.
long hair. Oh my God, her energy was just so fun. Like when, it was just such a breath of fresh air
Yeah,
when
she
she
was. She was
started.
so childlike. She was like, do you remember Rainbow Bright?
Yes,
She just
yes.
reminded me of Rainbow Bright. She was, and she was an older lady, I think. Like, I don't think she was young, but yeah, she was. I was just like, oh my God, please kidnap me and like keep me here because I don't want to leave. Like, I literally felt like we were being held hostage, and that the energy and the physical space of Findhorn was like, once you leave here, you're in deep shit again. But so long as you're here, you're okay.
Yes.
And so it was like it was the strangest feeling. Like, oh God, it was so funny.
And she reminded me of, like, I got the feeling of like a fairy in a human body.
Yes,
I was just
she
like,
absolutely
I remember
was.
being like all smiles of like, I finally met a fairy in real life. Like,
Yes.
she's right here. Um, and like
Totally.
she walked us out onto the road and she was like, this is the runway where the fairies take off.
Fairies land. That's right.
And she showed us around, and she gave us such an interesting tour of like, here's the secret hot tub that you can sneak into, and this is the beautiful unicorn that stands outside. And I remember when we were at that place, like the Great Hall, she had turned and she got this like really mischievous smile on her face, and she's like, I can already tell some of you aren't going to want to leave here. And I was just like, oh, you are so my people. You just read me so clearly. That's me. I want to stay here. And funny enough, I had a dream about Findhorn last night too, that I moved there for a whole year. So
oh wow.
It's funny about Findhorn.
And I think you and I were lucky enough, that was the only place that you couldn't have your own room. And so you and I were actually rooming together there, thank God. So at least we had 5 seconds. I mean, we had to whisper in our room because God knows who we were sharing a house. So yeah, they're different houses. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Findhorn, look it up. But it's a really sacred place, and you have to ask permission to stay there. You can't just rock up, and it's not a holiday place. Like, this is a place where this is a community and a village where people live. And yeah, it's so special. And I think the owner had been there before, but I think it might have been pre-fame in inverted commas. And so I think the people were unpleasantly surprised at the change in behaviour and respect levels on the second coming of the cult, because they were clearly not impressed. And it was actually really embarrassing to be. I was just mortified to be part of the group.
I know.
Actually.
I was constantly like, can I help? I'm really sorry. Thank you. Like, I was trying to I felt I was compensating, and that wasn't the first place I was doing that. But I was constantly trying to do that because, and as a business owner myself and working with groups, I know the drain it can cause, even when people are pleasant, but when they're demanding, it's hard. But the magic of Findhorn, if you're not familiar with Findhorn, I really recommend that book. It's an older book, but it tells you the story of Findhorn and how it came to be, and how it was really, one woman with her husband, and they had 2 little kids, and a rough go happens in life, and they find themselves down on their luck, and they buy a trailer and move into this property that this is against, on the sea, so it's windy and it's harsh conditions, and the woman just every day finds a moment of silence to meditate and starts receiving this wisdom, this guidance of, you know, how to plant a garden and how to do this. And literally Findhorn, you know, in its early days was built by following your intuition and communicating with the elemental beings and the consciousness of the plants and the land and all of those things. So that was, I mean, that was the highlight for me. And that was a big part of me wanting to go to Scotland, is I wanted to go to Findhorn, because of having those experiences myself of speaking with the consciousness of plants and animals. You know, I wanted to see and feel it for myself of how other people had done that in the past. So I know for me, a big thing as we were arriving at Findhorn is I was like, I don't care what the schedule is. I'm gonna do what I need to get done at Findhorn. This is my one day. We get one full day at Findhorn, and I want to experience it all. So they had a few like daily activities that we were welcome to participate in, like a morning meditation and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm gonna do every meditation, and I'm gonna get up early and I'm gonna do that. You know, I didn't do the sadhana, but I'm gonna do it here at Findhorn. So the next morning I got up really early. It was still dark out, right? Because we arrived in the dark, I didn't have any bearings really of where we were. So I'm trying to find this meditation hall, and I got it wrong. It wasn't where I thought it was. And so I started walking, and I'm getting lost, like turn. It's kind of, you know, kind of like the setup of like a trailer park, if you've been to them here in Canada and the US. So it's a lot of trails, and then there's houses, and there's trailers and mobile homes and stuff like that. So it's easy to get turned around. And so anyway, at some point I look at my watch and I'm like, well, at this point I'm late for the meditation. I'm going to miss it. So I just was like, well, universe, what do you want me to do? Clearly you didn't want me to go to this meditation. So I start just walking. I'm like, I'll just walk in the dark. I've been doing it every day anyway. And I would come and I'd be like, tell me where to turn, left or right. Like I did full intuitive walk. So I'm walking through, you know, Findhorn in the dark in the middle of the morning, and I see up ahead this like white circle up ahead of me, and I was like, is that an orb? Is that a ghost? Like, oh my God, like I'm in the forest at this point. Like there's not even houses around anymore. It's like a Blair Witch type scenario. And I realized it's a rabbit tail, that it was a little bunny rabbit in front of me with the tail up. And so the moonlight was reflecting off
catching
of
it.
tail. So I was like, okay, well, I'll follow the rabbit. So many things to this year, right? I'm going to follow the right rabbit. And so I follow it down the path, took me through the woods, and then it took me into this like kind of lower bushy area. And we go up this little hill, and then I hear the rabbit say, sit down. And I'm like, right here? And it's like, sit down. And the rabbit stopped at this point. So I was like, okay, I sat down. And then the rabbit had said, you're going to meditate here. And I was like, okay, at this point, I'll just go with it. And then the rabbit hopped off, and I closed my eyes and I sat there and I meditated for quite a while. And I cried quite a bit. Like it was a huge release, right? Because of everything that had happened the past few days. So I just cried and I cried and released a lot and received some messages. And then I could hear the birds, like the seagulls off in the distance, and the sun was starting to rise at this point. So the sky was more of like a pinky color, but it wasn't yet. It was a slow rise that morning. And so once everything had released, I heard, okay, you want a tour of Findhorn? And I was like, okay, sure. So as the sun rose, basically the same thing. I got a personal tour by what, I don't know who my guide was, but it was some spiritual guide that literally was like, turn here. Okay, this is the meditation circle. Turn here. This is where we have our buildings. Go down this path. I ended up making it all the way down to the beach, which is quite a long walk once you've done it. I don't know how I even got there and back, because having walked it a few times now, it's kind of
far. Yeah, it's hard to find too.
Yeah. And so I walked along the beach for quite a while, and I ran into a woman walking her dog on the beach, and we said hello, and just some politeness. Then I came back and I kind of walked through, and as I was coming back in, I saw the same woman from the beach with her dog, and she's like, oh, I saw you on the beach, you must be having a nice morning. And I was like, oh, you don't even know, it's so nice to be here. It's so nice to just walk and to feel this energy. Like I was just so grateful at that point. And then I came back in, and I had picked up a bunch of rocks, right,
Mm-hmm.
from the beach, and set them
And
up.
they were beautiful. Like they were beautiful, but they were rocks. They were in rock form.
Like river rocks, right? Like
Yes.
beach rocks. Very smooth, but just gray, white rocks.
Yeah.
And I set them up in our, I wonder if I have a picture.
The windowsill was jam-packed with.
Yeah, it was. I think I have a picture of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Right there. So, and I don't even think that was at the full, because I kept going back to the beach to get more rocks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the trail there to the beach. So it's quite a long walk to get down there, because probably the protection from the wind and that. So then I met up with you, and we were supposed to go for another group meditation at this point. And I remember neither of us wanted to go, but we felt that it was probably better to just make an appearance than to deal with the aftermath of not.
Totally. And because it was particularly because it was the owner was leading that meditation, and we were told it was a big significant thing. And so yeah, we'd been sort of told in no uncertain terms, like, it's not an option to not turn up. And I could barely even get up that morning, because I think being somewhere where we felt like we could breathe for 5 seconds, once I let go, my body, like I was so tired and just physically and emotionally and mentally drained. I could barely get out of bed. And I remember FaceTiming my then partner, and I think she had somebody over, like a friend over, and I didn't realize, and like I really didn't want to be on FaceTime with someone else. Like I literally just woken up, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. And when the other woman saw me, she was like, oh my God, because she was like, she couldn't get over like how tired and like drained and like sad I looked. And yeah, my partner then told me later on, she was just like, oh my, we couldn't get over, like we were just dying at seeing like how sad you were and how anxious and like obviously traumatized you were. Yeah, so it was, I really didn't feel, the last thing I wanted to do was go do, I think it was not even like a meditation, it was supposed to be like an actual class, like that. I think that's what it was like. You know, it was probably the first time, because we had the facilities to do it, the first time on the tour that you know, the owner was supposed to be running an actual yeah, like kind of session with everybody. So yeah, and little did we know that I can't even remember, were we sitting next to each other in that one, or did we purposely separate? I feel like we separated. Like this is the shit we had to contend with. Just like, okay, strategically don't sit next to each other, because you know then we'll get in trouble. And I was like being at school. And leading up to this, of course, there'd been all the rumors about, you know, is the owner going to get married on this trip, because you know both sets of parents were there, and all of that hoo-ha. And I would have thought, yeah, they probably would have, like at the end of the tour or whatever. But no, lo and behold, how long did we have to sit there waiting in that room, Jen, for them to make an appearance?
More time than I wanted to sit when I was in the one place that I actually really wanted to be on this trip.
Yeah.
I was getting really, this was the one time that it really bothered me. Like the other times I was like, fine, whatever. This time it really bothered me, because I was like, I could be out talking to the people who live here. I could be out talking to the fairies. I could be out doing all these things that I came here to do. And now I'm sitting in a room waiting. So I was really disappointed.
And there was just no communication as usual. And then I remember kind of one of the women who was on the tour, who's like on the outside of the posse, but really desperate to be in the inner sanctum, decided that she would get up and lead a mantra, like just start a mantra so that it gave everybody something to do, because you're thinking, okay, they'll be here in, you know, they're running 10 minutes late, they're running 20 minutes late. We literally chanted for, I reckon, 45 minutes with her until even she gave up. It got to the point of ridiculous. I think they kept us waiting there for like an hour to an hour and a half. That's how utterly ridiculous it was. And to not even send a member of your staff to say, hey, they're running late, like they'll now be here at X time. Literally kept us sitting there with no one saying a word, no one from the posse coming in. And then, you know, we find out what after she arrives, does the class, whatever, then we find out later on that they got married that morning. And it's like, what is going on? Like, it just defies like logic to me. It's just insane. Like the whole thing is just insane.
I think, you know, in some ways, I don't know, I kind of got the sense that there was quite a few people that felt disheartened by that because of the lack of communication. You know, even the people that maybe hadn't felt that way up until that point, because I mean, I don't think anyone would have had a problem with it if they're like, hey, you know, why don't you guys just take the day off, explore Findhorn?
Totally.
And they could have enjoyed, you know, I mean, I know I felt that way of like, I kind of felt bad that they felt rushed to have to come and teach and do all this, when I was like, if it had just been told like, hey, enjoy your day, we're going to have a private day, go do what you want today, and we'll meet up tomorrow morning, or we'll meet up this evening or something, I would have been completely cool with that, because my time would have been respected and their time would have been respected, and everyone would have done what would have made them happy. So, I mean, but, you know, things happen, I guess, too. And then after that, I think we had the choice of going on a tour, like a guided tour, or like dancing. We chose the tour.
I took the tour.
What was interesting was that same lady that I met in the morning ended up being our tour guide, because she was like, I can't remember her exact title, but she was like CEO, or she was one of the executive leadership in Findhorn. So it was real. I mean, I really enjoyed the tour for the most part. I enjoyed the one I got my private tour in the morning better. I'm not gonna lie, because I didn't have all those other energies to deal with. But it was really lovely to be able to spend time with that woman. Like, I was really excited.
She was lovely. And initially she came across as a little bit like cold and like harsh, but then once we got into it, and I remember one of the things that she said that significantly stuck out to me, she was talking about like spirituality and you know, what teachings she follows, and you know, her practices and stuff. And she was talking about how much they've evolved over time, and how it's constantly changing, and you know, people will be in the community who might be, you know, like they run the Buddhist like session meditation every morning in that little hut and everything. And she's like, sometimes I would do that, and then other times that doesn't resonate, and blah blah blah. And that just stood out for me so much, because probably at that point in time was when my faith was going to be completely obliterated. And I remember just getting this intuitive hit of, this will be important to you later. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But I think because at the time we were so engrossed and embedded in the kundalini scene, and you know, because you don't mix that with anything else, and you know, the amount of time you would practice and the amount of things that we were involved in with that crew, it didn't leave time for anything else anyway. Like, I certainly wasn't doing other forms of yoga or other meditation or anything. Like, everything was just centered around, you know, I was probably doing a couple of hours a day minimum of this kundalini practice. So yeah, I thought that was interesting that stood out, and boy did I like need to rely on that once we got to the end of this trip, and all of that was taken away, and my faith was completely bloody shattered in a million pieces in what I'd been doing up until then.
It's interesting because I remember her talking about that too, and that particular point really sat with me that day, right? And I know that's part of their philosophy there as well, is they don't dictate what spiritual practice or lineage you follow. They just encourage you to have a spiritual practice, whatever that practice is for you. And I was like, wow, the freedom
How
in that.
refreshing.
That's so much freedom right there, and it feels so loving and so, accepting of people. It was, it was a very stark contrast to what we had been experiencing, I think. And I was just like, oh, can I just stay here forever? Can we hide out here until our flight leaves?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
But
and then did we go to the shop that afternoon?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I went to the shop twice while I was there. And despite being concerned about finances at this point, I also needed to replenish all of my crystals. And I also needed or wanted, I should say, some of my other tools that I use in my spiritual practice. I wanted some dragon's blood incense and some frankincense. And I think I had bought, they have their flower essences. They make their own flower essence sprays, and they had a psychic protection flower essence.
We bought up big.
But what was interesting is, when we were hanging out in the evening, because I think we had a free evening and everyone was just kind of lingering and chatting, is they sold out of that psychic protection flower essence spray when our group was there, because we weren't the only ones that were buying it. There was other people that were buying that up in the group as well. I remember thinking, well, isn't that interesting?
I mean, if I could have taken the spray pump off that thing and chugged that down, like, oh my God, I would have drunk it in one hit at that point. I was just like, we bought up big in that shop. Anything I could get that was just like, please, all the beings in this world, please help me. Like, that's how I was feeling at that point. But I think we had free time up until dinner, but then we had to go and do the meditation in the sacred room. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
And that was when the cracks started to appear. So you had a big moment in there, which you can recount. And I also remember at this stage, I was like just so pissed off and just not okay with any of it, because just the disrespecting, and also just, the way that certain people had been behaving to staff and whatever, I was just so appalled and embarrassed to be part of it and to be associated with them. I just had enough. And then again, we were not given the choice of not attending this meditation session. You can explain to everybody where it was, but I also remember one of the woman that was on the tour who'd never done kundalini yoga before. She was American, and at that point she lost her shit. Like, I remember I was sitting next to her in that meditation, and we literally, the meditation barely even finished, and her and I got up and like literally walked out, and I was like, fuck this shit and fuck this behavior. Like, after that, you can explain what happened in the session, but I was just,
So the original, I guess you could call mobile home that the family had lived in is still on the property, and it's been turned into a sanctuary or a meditation room. And so this, is considered a sacred space at Findhorn, because that is where
it started.
I'm forgetting her name. I know her name because I get her emails every day, her visions every day, but it's slipping me now. So I apologize.
Is it like Eileen or something like that?
Yeah, it is Eileen.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't remember her last name right now. So anyway, this is where she would go to sit and do her sittings every day to get, once they had kind of moved things around. So now it's a sanctuary, and it's a very sacred space for Findhorn, because that's where they do a lot of their meditations. And it's just a small little, like,
tiny. Yeah.
And I mean, it's original, like, it's vintage. And so when we were on the tour in the afternoon, the wizard was in our group. And for most of it, I was up with their tour guide, because I was like, I got questions and I came here for Findhorn. Like, I want to chat with you. I want to learn more. And at some point I must have got pushed back when we were in the garden, which is right before this particular mobile home. And we started walking back, and I was just following the group, and they went into the sanctuary. Lo and behold, I didn't realize the tour guide had actually gone back to the dining hall.
Yes,
So
everyone got split up. Yeah.
Yeah, we got split up. So I went in the sanctuary thinking, oh, this is where we're going next, and it's cool, you know. And anyway, we're all sitting, we kind of sit down in the chairs, and the wizard was leading, he decided to lead something. At this point, I'm like, where's the tour guide? Where'd she go? Are we not supposed to be in here? And then I'm like, oh shit, like this isn't good. But I was like, nonetheless, I'm here, he's here, I might as well stay, because who knows what's going to happen, and we seem to be in polarity, so why not? So I was like, I'll just do my own meditation, he can do his, and I close my eyes. And I had a really beautiful meditation, actually, because I connected with Eileen, and we had this really deep conversation about what it was like to start Findhorn, and you know, doing that with children, and the importance of listening to your inner guidance, and of trusting your heart, and you know, not having to follow what other people say. It was just a really beautiful meditation. I remember tears falling down my eyes. You know, I wasn't bawling, but you know, a tear fell down my face. And then I was like, okay, like we're done. What happened? Because I'm not really happy about what happened here. And then I think we ended up making our way back to the dining hall, and I realized what had gone on. And then in the evening, when we had the group session, we go back in, and there's a set of chairs. I wonder if I have the picture of it here. So this is the outside. So that is that's the original mobile home. And then there's, you kind of walk a little bit further, and it's the sanctuary is just a little further off. But it's, you know, it's about that size in terms of size reference of what you're walking into. But this is their original garden and their original home when they were living there. And
it makes my heart burst just looking at it. I feel like I'm back there. It's such a beautiful place.
I don't have the picture inside, but this was, I remember this is one of the prints they have in that room, because I was constantly staring at this image when we were in there. But when we went back with the full group, there's chairs on the outside. Like there's a circular set of chairs, and then there's some extra chairs, I think, on the outside. And then there's a couple of cushions in the middle that kind of sit around a little table that holds flowers and a candle. And so when we went in, I had asked if it was okay if I sat on the floor, because I prefer to be grounded, and I prefer to sit cross-legged as opposed to sitting in a chair. And they said that was fine. So a few other people joined me on the floor, and they were doing a meditation in there. And my biggest concern was, like, especially because I had had that connection with Eileen in the afternoon, and a big part of that space is sacred. And a big part of the sacredness is that she would go to sit there in silence.
Silence, yep.
And what happened is everyone was chatting, and it was really loud, and there was a lot of talk and banter, which, you know, I'm cool with that on a normal day. That normally doesn't bother me.
But not in that space. Not in that space.
It felt so disrespectful in that space for some reason. And, you know, I just kept hearing her in my head going, can you just be quiet? This is my quiet state. And so I was feeling awful to be part of that, you know, at the same time. And the meditation happened, and I can't remember. I know I had seen some stuff in there. I can't remember. My main concern was really Eileen and connecting with her. And then after we finished the meditation, I don't think it was a long one, then it went back to the banter, and it was almost like we're going to hold a party now in this.
Totally. In this space. And for people to understand what it was like, it was the equivalent of walking into a Buddhist temple. For anyone who's been to a Buddhist temple, and you understand how, like, you could hear a pin drop in there, and like you don't even talk to the person next to you in a space like that. Like I wouldn't even relate it to a church, because, you know, sometimes people chat and whisper and whatever in church. It to me, it was like the greatest thing I can liken it to is a Buddhist temple, because, you know, there's just that level of like sacredness and silence, and you do not talk, and whereas it was like they were having a party. It was like people were lying down as if they were in their own lounge room, just like talking shit like about God knows what. And it was just, I was just going, oh my God. And the whole way through the meditation, I just kept getting in my head, stop, 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 stop. And that day, I refused to do the meditation. I sat with my eyes open. I think the woman I was describing before did the same thing. I was like, I'm not being a part of this, because we were also like chanting out loud. It was, and it just, everything about it felt disrespectful to the space and everything that we'd learnt about that day. And it was just this attitude of, we don't care less, we're not about honoring this space, we're about doing whatever the hell we want, and whatever we think is okay, is what goes, no matter where we are. And that just like is so, goes against all of my values and, you know, the kind of person that I am. And I was just so sick of, at that point, it was like, you know, when you go on holidays and that stereotypical Americans in Europe or somewhere, like the Americans that have never traveled anywhere in their lives, and then you're in a church or a castle or whatever, and you know, they're talking at the top of their lungs and they're loud and obnoxious. And by this stage I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be associated with these people anymore. Like, this is just so wrong.
And I don't know, like, I don't know if that is how Findhorn actually treats that room, like if they do ask for sign. I can't remember, but I know that was definitely how I was feeling, you were feeling, and some of the other people were feeling.
Well, because outside there's all the signs that say please be quiet. This is a like, I don't think it says silent, but it says please be quiet, please refrain. And even just for the people who live there, because that building is right next to where people live, and this was like late at night, like it was after dinner and whatever, and people are like, you know, squealing, yelling, just like top of their lungs, and you're going, this is people's homes. Like, it's the nighttime, and this is not a place where it's a little community where people live. Like, it's just, it was just so ugh.
Yeah, so I know, like, I remember meditating. I'm pretty sure I didn't do the mantra. I didn't even fake it at this point. I was just like, I'm just going to meditate and close my eyes and try and connect with the true energy here. Not the true energy, but what I'm aligned to, I guess, or resonate with. And I remember apologizing to Eileen for the noise. And then I remember distinctly hearing, get out, just get up and leave. And I think because I think the three of us, the other woman too, I think we all kind of, we didn't say anything to each other. We just all kind of stood up around the same time and left. Because it just didn't feel good to do that by any means. And then I remember going back to the room. I ended up chatting with some people in the rooms or out in the shared area for a while. Just kind of chilled out for the rest of the night. And the next morning, I think we ended up walking to the beach again at some point. I know we went back and I got some more rocks.
Yeah, so did I. Did I. And one of them I took to my past life reading, and it disappeared as well with the other crystals. So I'm like, I don't know where it's gone. Yeah, it's very
interesting. Because I know the next morning there was like a rush again of like, we're gonna have to leave earlier than we had originally planned. And so when I woke up, I was like, I have way too many rocks and they're not gonna fit in my suitcase. So I had to start like deciding which ones I was going to keep and which ones I wasn't going to keep. And a few people wanted to take some of the ones that I wasn't going to keep, which was fine. But I also knew I couldn't leave them in my room. I didn't want to leave a mess at all. I was like, I'm going to do everything I can for these people to leave it as clean as possible. and I had taken some of my rocks, and we were close to where they have like a little daycare center, and so I went and left some of the rocks in a little heart for the kids because I wanted to leave something special for them. And then the rest I ended up just like jamming in my suitcase and sitting on my suitcase and fitting them all in. I probably had like what, 20 pounds of rock or something.
Easily.
It was a
so
lot.
funny.
It was a little bit obscene, but you know, we'll come back to those, I guess, in a day or two. Because I still haven't figured out what's going on with my Findhorn rocks. So,
and I'm still jealous that mine didn't do the same.
Do you want to continue here, or is this a good place to maybe kind of take a break?
Probably a good place to leave it, because then we've probably got just one more, the final stop, which was probably the most harrowing stop of the trip. And I think we were supposed to get up like extra early because we had to make a ferry. We needed to be on time because we had to make a ferry, and there was only one ferry for the day. So yeah, it was super important to be on time. And lo and behold, who did we wait for, and who made us late?
Yeah, and so where we were headed to for our last stop was the Orkney Islands. So Skara Brae, the Ring of Brodgar. We went to some, I can't remember what they were called. Tombs is what I called them, but I know that's not the name of them. Some places that I still probably visit on a weekly basis at this point.
God, yeah, that was and for anyone who doesn't know the geography of Scotland, the Orkney Islands are literally, I think one of the tour guides when we were there described it. They said you are at the end of the earth and the next stop is Antarctica, and that absolutely sums up, like, I felt like we were not even on the earth. Like it is just so, it feels so remote. And yeah, we'll go into more detail about the energy there and the folklore around it. But yeah, it was it makes me like shiver even now just thinking about it. But
yeah, so if you've listened this long, thanks for making it to this point. And you know, just as we preface, I know, you know, you're seeing a lot of different emotions and energies come out of us as we talk, and we might not be using language or descriptors that are maybe the most like politically correct at this point. And you know, we're not saying anything with the intention to offend anyone. We're simply trying to express the emotions and the energies that are coming through, and really with the intention of us finding that understanding of it, because we're still, I think, trying to understand what came up and why it came up and what does it mean for us. So
yeah, totally. So I think in the next session we'll be able to complete the tour, and then maybe just do a like roundup and a reflection on things that have happened since then, and interesting things that we've found out or realized, and you know, kind of our summing up about the whole thing and where we're at at the moment.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, we'll meet you on the Orkney Island, I